You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma podcast. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode. Excited to share this episode with you today, but before we do, I've got to thank our sponsors. First of all, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. They've been a huge part of this podcast for the last few years. So the Oklahoma Hall of Fame have been sharing Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com. And for daily updates, go to oklahomahof on Instagram and give them a follow. Our other sponsor today is Chickasaw Nation. Now, the Chickasaw Nation have sponsored pretty much everything in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and it's an honor to have their name and their brand supporting this podcast. So a huge shout out to Governor Anatoby for supporting this podcast. It really means a lot. Our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is brought to you by the Doghouse OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my two pups, and the Doghouse have come in clutch. The team over there are incredible. They've taken care of my two golden doodles, and so it's been an honor to partner with them on the podcast and share the love. And the one thing that I do with the sponsors that I have is stuff that I use and recommend, like the Diffies with my car, Hall of Fame. They're awesome. Citizens Bank's where I bank. Chickasaw Nation, huge supporter of Oklahoma. And adding to that is the Doghouse. And so if you're in need of doggy daycare in the day or boarding overnight, they do grooming and other cool things too. But I've had a fantastic experience, and it's an honor and a privilege to share this with you too. So go to thedogHouseOKC.com and follow them on Instagram at thedogHouseOKC. And hopefully our pups will run into each other. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, host, back with another episode. We're up in Edmond today at the agency office. If you don't know what the agency is, we're in the real estate world. You probably watched Netflix and seen Buying Beverly Hills. That's what the agency is, and I'm a real estate agent at the agency, if you don't know that already. We're real estate agents. We shout it from the rooftop, so you've probably heard it from me. But enough of me yapping about selling homes. You can reach out to me another time for that. My guest today is the great Michael Zubach from the Oklahoma City Thunder, has done work for them for 8 years, is in the period of transitioning to a new role at Lampstand, which I'm excited to hear his new transition, excited to hear about why he's making a move. But we've been friends probably for a few years now.
Yeah.
We had coffee a while back and just kind of stayed in touch. And I love what you do. I love your talent, your skill, your movie making. And you've been a part of the Thunder and the community of the Thunder now for 8 years. Before we get to all that, though, we got to set some context. You're not from here like me, right?
I'm not from here. I'm from Sacramento, California. I was in California pretty much up until 26 years old. Orange County, Santa Monica. So West Coast to Oklahoma. It's been a journey.
The last thing you thought you'd be doing is coming to Oklahoma, right? Growing up in California.
Yeah, I remember coming in on a Saturday and moving in, and it's like you hear these sirens going off at noon. My dad and I are looking around like, what is going on?
What is happening in Oklahoma?
Yeah.
That's the noon alarm clock that everyone knows here. Is the testing tornado sirens. And you've been through your fair share of storms in that time, right?
Yeah. And I was just a gullible California kid, did not know tornadoes even existed, so I moved right into Tornado Alley. So,
like me, dude. It's funny, right? When you hear those first sirens going off at noon and it's the middle of the day and you're like, what is happening?
Right,
and no one else is moving around you. No one's freaking out. You're like, wait a second.
Right.
Like, why am I the only one freaking out right now? I do remember my first tornado noon siren for sure. So California, born and raised, brothers and sisters, big family?
One brother in Alaska, so Anchorage, Alaska. Yeah, lives up there, and so.
Have you visited?
Yeah, it's a beautiful state. I mean, when you think of Alaska, you think of, what you see on the Discovery Channel, and but it's a beautiful state. And summers, sun rises at 4 a.m., sets at 1 a.m. Winter's exact opposite. So
It's crazy.
but it's cold, but it's a gorgeous state. I recommend people to go. So
Again, you see it on TV, right? You see all the documentaries, and I've had friends who know people that have gone up there or have been there themselves, and you're just like, you can't explain how cold it is. It's just that cold. Yeah. But people still live there, so it must be doable to do it. What's your brother do up there?
So he does business finance for hospitals.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, but I love going there because being a photographer and a videographer and a drone operator, it's a creative wheelhouse for me to be at. So it's flying FPV drones down mountainsides, and it's gorgeous.
Awesome. Yeah. That's the landscape that you dream of when you're sitting in Oklahoma thinking, I want to go fly drones down, And I know I've shared some of your drone work through the Broken Bow down the Mountain Fork River, and like that is, especially the FPV stuff, like you got your goggles on, and it's so awesome to see, right? And obviously drone technology now, and just how the access that people can get, and it's not $20,000-$30,000 for a drone that can capture some really good content. And I did some work previously with the Oklahoma Drone Festival, which you had a movie in, right? So which is really cool. Thunderbird Drone Festival, sorry. The guys there are doing a great job and doing that every year, which is fantastic for the local drone scene and local aerospace scene, because in Oklahoma, people listening don't realize the aerospace industry here is pretty epic, right? It's kind of important. So growing up California, older brother, sun shining every day pretty much, right?
Surfing waves, and
you were into surfing, doing
I was
stuff?
into surfing, skateboarding, all that,
Just ticking all the cliche California boxes.
Exactly, yeah.
Who in your life kind of puts a camera in your hand then at the young age?
Man, so funny story. So I was a big soccer player like my whole life, and my team in California was pretty good. Multiple state championships, and getting to the point where I'm like, hey, I kind of want to play soccer in college. And so my brother and dad started bringing a camera out and started filming my games, and kind of mainly filming me to kind of have a reel to send out to colleges. But I was like, hey, how about you kind of capture everything that's going on with the team. So, you go to hotels, you film, behind the scenes, having fun. So my brother put together like a little highlight reel of our season. And as a kid, being 16 years old, I'm just kind of like very interested in what my brother's doing, kind of peeking over his head, seeing how he's cutting up, music to video. And I really got into video production then, and the second year I had my dad film some more games, and I started putting together content for my team. As a kid, I've always been fascinated with movies like Mighty Ducks, Remember the Titans, and it's just, certain scenes just, the hair on your neck stands up, and I think it was watching my brother put that piece together. I was like, God, this is something I'm kind of interested in. And so in high school, I kind of took it upon myself to make a senior video, kind of encapsulates like what our senior year is about, and what this high school is about, because I went to Jesuit high school, which is an all-boy Catholic school, and they're very big on the brotherhood, and they're very big on sports. And so I made this senior video, and then a lot of people came up to me and was like, you're really good at this, and you should give us a shot in college. And so that's kind of what catapulted me into my video production journey, and it's always been an anchor of sports. I think sports is something that everybody can relate to,
Yeah, and it's the first thing I thought of is when you talk about sports and something everyone can relate to, it brings people together, and sometimes that's kind of all that a town has, right? Like, is there common love of whatever the sport is, and it makes me think of the Wrexham, right? The documentary on the football team in Wrexham that Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds, right?
Right, Reynolds, yeah.
Has kind of invested in this team, but like, I know Wrexham as a town because it's in Wales and there's nothing there. Like, it's like kind of it was a mining town, and kind of went, kind of fell on hard times a little bit with the economy, but their football team is like life for them. You know,
Right.
it's kind of like Friday Night Lights here, right? Like
Right.
your football team on a Friday night is, especially for the small towns, is everything. And, you know, we can all relate to that, right? We can always remember those great, like that one pass, right? Or that one catch or that one goal
Right.
or whatever it is that, like, you know, everyone kind of relates to, and they remember where they were when that moment happened.
Exactly.
And you're now capturing these awesome moments, right? And get
Yeah.
to replay them. So that's really cool to kind of dive in and you know, as a younger brother, you're looking up to your older brother, seeing what he's doing, and you know, you clearly made the decision not. So you went to university for videography and thing, and stopped playing football, or do you continue?
No,
to
so
play football? My football.
Yeah, so I still played soccer in college. So I got a scholarship to Cal Lutheran University. I was a goalie. Played my first two years and studied film. You know, kind of lost the love for soccer in college because it was, you know, more of a job versus the love of it. And you realize at some point, like, am I going to play sports after college? Is this going to be a career? So I realized that it wasn't. And so that's when I started to really get into film and had a couple of internships down in Los Angeles. HSI Productions specifically was a spot that I PA'd at. And at first I was very into it. Being so close to Hollywood, you're like, the natural progression is to go into film, commercial, music videos. But what a lot of people don't understand is, like, you know, everybody in that industry is freelance. You're an independent contractor. And so you really don't know where your next paycheck is coming. You could work 2 months on a film and then go 3 months without anything. You don't have any health insurance or any of that. So I realized that, you know, the stability of that is something that I did not like. And then, you know, I knew, you know, the sports world, you know, you have your ESPNs and your Fox Sports, and sports always go on. You're always going to have a job in sports. And so I had a friend actually in college that got a job at ESPN as an associate producer for ESPN, and called me up one day, you know, 2 years after I graduated college. I was serving tables at Red Robin and BJ's after graduating. So parents were proud of me. So I got that call, and, you know, that kind of, you know, put me in touch with the sports world. And I worked in the Big West Conference, which is like kind of like your UC Irvine's, your Long Beach, your Fullerton. And so we broadcasted all the games, you know, so football, baseball, soccer, volleyball. So we pulled the truck up to the colleges, and I was the guy in the truck going, you know, cut to camera 1, 2, 3, you know, rolling replays. So that was a dream come true, you know, being 23 years old and, you know, working for ESPN and directing games. And, you know, I had a great time doing that, but I've always been a storyteller. And as much as I love, you know, directing and being a part of live productions, I knew my heart was more into storytelling. And so Fox Sports launched a network called Fox Sports 1, and they were trying to become a competitor with SportsCenter. SportsCenter was somewhere where everyone went to get their content, ESPN. And so they launched this new network and had a bunch of job openings, and I applied and started working at Fox Sports 1 as an editor, and that opened so many doors for me. I was working on UEFA Champions League, NFL Football Sunday, MLB games. I'd be the guy that would cut the highlights up for the broadcasters to, you know, voice track over, you know. And one funny part of my job there was we did obit videos. So Fox Sports would get information from agents and people when so-and-so were in the hospital, you know, possibly about to die. And so we'd create these obituary videos ahead of time. So when so-and-so passed away, you were ready to air it, you know. So I probably created almost like 15 obit videos and only one ran. So
Thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully, exactly.
Yeah. Who was the one that ran?
He was a longtime coach at the Portland Trail Blazers. I'm blanking on his name right now. But that was a great journey. You know, I kind of knew there was something bigger out there for me. And being in California for my whole life, at some point you get sick of the traffic, you get sick of the people, and, you know, you kind of want to try something new. And there's something about being comfortable that is bittersweet and it's good and bad, you know. comfort. I was loving my work, working at two of the biggest sports networks in the world. But I lost the challenge, and I lost kind of like that, urge to really like search for something new. And so I knew I needed to get out of my comfort zone. And that's when I started thinking about working for an organization, whether that's football, MLB. I was looking at working at, college universities, being their video production guy there. OKC Thunder had an opening in 2016. And I, applied to the job. And funny thing is, I applied to the job, but what I did was I downloaded a bunch of YouTube videos of Kevin Durant. And this was before he, took his departure. Yeah. It's let me put together a little fun basketball reel of Kevin Durant just to show them a little bit of my NBA basketball editing skills. And kind of gave that to them and showed them the rest of my portfolio. And they hired me on, and funny enough, he left a month later. So that's kind of what brought me out to Oklahoma City.
Wow.
And been here 8 years now.
Yeah. What are you thinking when you're like, I'll apply for this job with the Thunder? Did you know much about the Thunder before you applied for the job? Or were you thinking I'll just go there, cut my teeth for a few years and move on? What was your kind of headspace at that moment?
Yeah. Being in California and coming to Oklahoma City, I think my headspace was I was going to be here for a few years. I was going to put this job on my resume and, go somewhere else, maybe Chicago Bulls or New York Knicks, a bigger market. Stepping off the plane at Will Rogers Airport, like a lot of people, you're like, what did I get myself into this?
Yeah.
But, it's... Man, I thought I'd be here for 2 years, and I'm here for 8 years later. I think that speaks volumes to the organization in Oklahoma City. And, Oklahoma City, it does remind me a lot of Sacramento, very residential, small community. But, it goes without saying the people here are just amazing, And so,
Yeah. What is, your dad, you said your dad came with you when you were over here. Are they all still, but your mom and dad back in Sacramento still?
Yes.
Okay, so brothers in Alaska, mom and dad in Sacramento.
Yes.
Do they visit often?
Yes, okay. Yes. About once a year.
Nice.
And they try to pick their time strategically, so it's usually in the October when it's a little bit the 70 degrees.
Right.
But yeah, so.
Dude, that's awesome. So just apply for the job thinking, I'm going to cut my teeth, come over here for a few years, build a resume, get some kind of, NBA experience up close. What was your first week like when you got here? What's that like, first week? And what's it like, after you get moved in and you're like, oh, this is my job now. And I guess during that time, 2016, content was big, but it isn't what it is today.
No.
Right? And so you're getting the content timing really well, because they're probably just like, okay, now we need to do more content.
Yeah.
Go head it up, go create. So you probably had, not that you had a lot of freedom, but you kind of had a little bit more than probably you would have now.
Yeah, social media wasn't really that big in 2016, 17, 18. But, my first week, between November and December, the Thunder does so much work in the community, the holiday assist. And so I get thrown into, the world of community events with the Thunder, and I think that the greatest thing about the Thunder is, every team in the league has to do work in the community, but I'm pretty sure they're ranked number 2 in the amount of events and the people that they reach, and they always go above and beyond. But during the holidays, it's a different beast. They are out at homelands, they're out at YMCA's, Boys and Girls Clubs constantly, and Russell Westbrook at the time was, building reading rooms. So we'd go to these elementary schools and build new small libraries for the kids. And that was my first event. At these events, you have to, you go, you film the player, you film, the interactions, you interview people at the event. But you always have to put a mic on the player, to capture that high quality audio. And I just remember walking up to Russell Westbrook, just kind of shaking shaking my hand and just so scared to put a mic on, one of the best players in the world at the time. I was scared to death and just asking him questions and interviewing him. And I had done that kind of thing at ESPN before, but now you're talking to one of the best players in the NBA. But I think Russell kind of saw I was a little nervous guy, and he kind of rolled with it. But yeah, and then I was my first couple years, I kind of did a lot of the practice content. You go up and you film the players after practice, interviewing with the sideline reporters, game day content. But I think at a very early stage in my career at the Thunder, a lot of the people, my bosses, realized where my passion was, and it really was in long form storytelling, documentaries. And it was that year that Nick Collison was going to retire, and so we all as an organization knew we wanted to do something for Nick and something to kind of capture his career and put out some kind of content. My boss, Dan Mahoney, VP of Video Production, and Matt Tumbleson, VP of Basketball Operations, we all kind of got together and said, what are we going to do? You could tell his story just like any other story, like a little kid growing up in Kansas and, going and playing basketball in college and just telling his whole story, right? But we wanted to do it a little differently, so we decided to tell his story through the last 2 weeks of his career. And so we basically followed him around the last 2 weeks and, followed him to New Orleans, San Antonio. But all these places really had a meaningful story to him. So San Antonio, him going against the Spurs, in those, Western Conference Finals, him playing against Memphis, him in New Orleans where he played, the Final Four. So there are all these little kind of small, side roads of his journey in the last 2 weeks that we kind of told. And so it was cool. And, Nick is, a pillar of the organization, and I think a lot of people had eyes on this piece, and at this point, the Thunder kind of decided to have a partnership with Dead Center, the local film festival here, and so they gave us a time slot, at I believe it was opening day, and we showcased it, and it got great reviews. And I think we kind of took a step back and we're like, we can kind of make something of this and kind of do this on an annual basis. So Dan Mahoney worked with Dead Center to kind of have a short, a partnership there to, we would have a film every year. And so we started a Thunder film department, and that's kind of where I really flourished. So
yeah, that's really cool to have,
Yeah.
to marry your love of sports, your documentary filmmaking, and that community aspect that the Thunder has had from its inception, right? You talk about the value that the organization puts into being engaged with the community, right? It's and you're not just like, we're all going to be fans through the good and the bad, but it's that kid who's going to grow up that remembers a Thunder superstar coming and reading them a book, or dropping in to to whatever. There's so many, right? Like, you got to see it all from just every morning to evening with those events, and Rumble's in the middle of all of it, right? Like, he's going to all the events too. And I think it's really cool that they agree and see the opportunity in documentary filmmaking, because we know this stuff's got to be documented, right? And from a professional standpoint, you can look back at those and be like, I made this, I made that, like any other videographer. But it's those meaningful relationships and those conversations that you've witnessed or you've been a part of, with a family or with a player, and just can't help but make your day feel good, right? There's a difference between making, obituary videos, right, that might not air, to, hey, I'm going out in the community with a guy who is worshipped in Oklahoma City because he plays a sport that, that isn't easy at all, and that, the fine level of professional athletes that get to that level, but they're in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
And it's not just about basketball in Oklahoma City. It's about everything else that goes around.
Right. And they touch so much in this community. And, I think that's what, Sam Presti and the organization realizes too, is like the community is everything. And so, you go to, the YMCA and you see these kids, they have a Thunder League there, and they put on that jersey, and they, the kid runs around in a number 2 jersey, thinks he's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And it makes him feel special. It makes him feel different. And so it's amazing what this organization does in the community. And, it's, back in 2008, you had OSU fans, you had OU fans, and then now you had one team to root for it and rally around, and that's something special. So
yeah,
it's just been great to be a part of that.
So the Mr. Thunder video is kind of like, when you look back, like the catalyst for the film department to really kind of spearhead it and move forward and obviously build this great partnership that you guys have had with Dead Center. And every year you're having a documentary released in there. Well, where do we go from there? So, they commit to this team now to make documentaries. Obviously you're probably still doing the community stuff, but do you really dive into, your role then is more, hey, let's go find these stories and like do a real documentary around these stories, not just like, hey, there's a highlight, 5-10 minute video or whatever.
Right. So my focus kind of shifted into more like the long form storytelling, and kind of like the higher end productions, and so I kind of really focused on content like video essays. You might see that being put out with Royce Young. Some more of these higher level pieces. Conceptualizing them. What does this short look like? How do we film it? How do we tell the story a little bit differently, and kind of be on the forefront of what's the newest ways of telling these stories. And so I kind of got pulled out of a lot of the more monotonous routine of production and content, whether that's our practice stuff or going out in the community. So I was a little bit more bigger picture, and so we really kind of focused my role into, more of like a creative lead role. And so I was, just kind of in charge of, what is the best way cinematically of telling these stories. And so we kind of over a course of a year kind of identify what those projects are. But the biggest thing for me was always the Thunder Films pieces. And that's what I always got so jacked about, and just that's where my excitement level was. So I've done a lot of like the intro videos in arena, right before the players are called out of the starting lineup, and I have a great time doing those. They're fun. I mean, you're creating a piece that gets the whole crowd and players hyped up right before a tip off. But the documentaries is kind of where my heart has always been. And so I think year 2, we told the story of Mark St. Ives, who's equipment manager. His role is different now, but he stayed with he was with the organization since he was 15, 14 years old in Seattle. So, this guy's been with the Sonics, being a ball boy, and now is, lead equipment manager. And then year 3, we had Paul George, and so we did a short animation project with him called Grown Up George, and kind of focusing on his relationship with his mom and his sister, and how they really impacted his life. And then year 4, I believe, was 2020, and that's when the infamous Jazz versus Thunder game happened on March 13th. And so that was a fun one. And that was probably one of my favorite ones, is Pause the Game. And so we were kind of like the epicenter of, the world stopping, and we were kind of like the start of the domino effect of sports worlds kind of shutting down, Rudy Gobert putting his hand on the mic. And, and so that was a fun one because, our our ideation on that one was to really tell the story from everybody that was in the arena. So we were interviewing, you know, our broadcasters, we were interviewing fans, you know, Clay Bennett, you know, coaches, players. And so kind of what was going on that day, like, you know, it was absolute mayhem. And then from there, we told the story of, you know, the after school program that Sam Presti started in Tulsa, the Seeds of Greenwood, you know, bridging the gap to, you know, African Americans, you know, and really kind of like giving them the opportunities. And so that was a great piece, and that was, you know, a full year of filming, going up to Tulsa. Yeah. So and it was a great project because, you know, we didn't know what we were getting into with this piece. You know, it was the first year of this program, and, you know, we were pretty much a fly on the wall for a whole year. And so that was a fun one. And then
that Greenwood Rising building is amazing. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Like, everyone has to go through that building. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really good job.
Just so much great, you know, great history there, or not so great history there.
Right.
Yeah.
They've just done a great job of capturing it and telling a story, you know, when you walk through it, right? In such a meaningful way. But yeah, it's a year of working on that and seeing all the people and the stories from that community must have been pretty cool. Because, you know, I know that Tulsa's tried to build, you know, kind of, you know, everyone's like, oh, we're in Oklahoma City, and that's kind of where the home of Oklahoma, you know, is the Thunder. But, you know, they've played games at the BOK, and you know, there's a conscious effort to reach out to the rest of the state, which I love. So yeah,
and that was an interesting project for me because you know, it was the first project that we were really kind of fly on the wall, and it's very this much cinema verite style of filming. You're very much, you're not directing at all. You're kind of like in the background, and you're just seeing things develop. And you know, I think really today a lot of documentaries are being more modernized, and so it's very much staged filming. And so the verite style is interesting because you kind of have to get to know your subjects well. You have to develop a relationship with them. And so, you know, I was filming kids that are in high school, and they're probably like, who the heck is this, you know, random kid in the corner filming us all day? So, you know, I had to develop a relationship with them to, you know, kind of create that bond and trust, because, you know, halfway through filming, you know, I'm, you know, in their homes filming them, you know, getting up and going to school in the morning, riding the bus with them at 6 a.m. And so that was definitely one where I was kind of out of my comfort zone, but, you know, we really had to create that relationship with them to really tell the story the right way. And I think after that year, we did steps on Derek Loxodon, which you had on the podcast here too. Great story. And that was a fun one because we got to spend 2-3 weeks out in, you know, beautiful San Diego.
The Olympic training facility
exactly.
in San Diego.
In a Chula Vista. And then this last year we did a story on Bismack Biyombo. So each year they keep getting better and better, and we're telling the stories in a different way, and we're looking for new ways. And I think the great thing too is we're not just telling Thunder stories, we're telling stories in the community. You know, Derek was an example of that.
I'll link the Derek episode and the movie below, because it's just, you know, his story about kind of losing his leg and being an athlete and wanting to play football at UCO, and then trying to continue to play football with his prosthetic, and then, you know, getting cut and you know, going to you know, the game, what was the games called? The Endeavor Games?
The Endeavor Games,
go to the Endeavor Games and seeing like, oh, like there's an opportunity here. And, you know, watching that journey, and now he just come back from Paris, right? He has a silver medal in Paris.
Yeah.
It's just insane. The whole story, and just like, it's and then you know, you talk about Bismack and the amount. I remember talking to you after it, and you're like, the amount of content that you had already to just kind of, that was the hard part with that one, is you had to go through all the content that was already given to you guys, which, you know, and seeing that impact of what he's done in his, you know, back in his home place, like, it's, you know, that's the stuff that you really wanted, that feel good stuff, right? And you're just there capturing it, or just kind of building the storyline he's already gone and done most of it.
Exactly.
So, that's incredible.
Yeah, and it's interesting because usually we go out and shoot everything that we edit, and whereas getting 300 plus hours of footage from his team, who's been filming him since day one going to the Congo, and sitting through every clip and just earmarking which is the best stuff, and and Bismack is he's such a genuine person. But his story was so much fun to tell because here's this kid who had a dream to get to the NBA, and he achieved that dream. But then once he got to the NBA, he's like, I have another dream. And it's like, how can I give back to the country I grew up in? And if you look at his foundation, he's brought so many kids over here for scholarships, and now he realized, like, I can't bring every kid over here, so he started building schools to give them the education in the Congo. And so I think he's going to be doing that work until the day he dies. So
that's amazing. And I can see why, this place kept you here for more than the 3 years that you thought you'd be planned on, right? Because, you're working on all these projects, and then, you're in the community a lot, so you get to see everyone, and it's not just work at that point, right? Like, you're around these people, and, the work that you're doing is so meaningful, not just to the people you're videoing, but to the greater community, and because everyone kind of sees a bit of themselves in whatever the story is, right?
Sure.
You can always relate to it. That's the beautiful thing about sport as well, is that we can all relate to something that's being told, and obviously your storytelling kind of skills and ability flourishes when the Thunder's like, go create, right? We have these parameters, but for the most part, like, just go do what you do, which is really awesome. And then you build your team too, right? And, you got a great team around you and all that too. So.
And there's been no boundaries on the creative, and so I think that's a great thing about the Thunder is, you can come to them with any idea. It's like, hey, let's try it. Let's see if it works, and if it doesn't, then we'll try something else. And so, I love being in a position where you can come to your organization and, hey, I want to give this a shot. And, I might fail at it, but let's try it.
Yeah.
And so I don't think like all organizations are like that in the NBA. And so, just having the freedom to do that, I think is something that has kept me around for 8 years. And, I think also Oklahoma City grows on you a little bit. But, it's also, seeing this, being here for 8 years and seeing this team kind of go through some really big highs and some lows, and then now seeing the come up again, and it's been a journey. And I've almost like tried hard to not be so connected to the wins and losses, but it's hard not to, and especially when you're in those Russell Westbrook, Paul George days, and so close to getting out of those rounds, but I kind of have to detach myself from the wins and losses, because then I go home angry.
We're all fans, right? It's funny. I had Les Thomas sitting in the same seat that you're in a couple of months ago talking. He's the hype man for Oklahoma State.
Okay.
And so we were talking, he's talking about the exact same thing. He's like, early on when I was doing this, I would get so mad on the sideline because of a call. I was yelling at the referee.
Right.
And like, he said there was a guy who was kind of checked him, was like, look, dude, like, people are watching you and they're relying on you. So when you're down, the crowd's looking at you. He's like, come on, like, you got this. Turn your brain off and don't be a fan. Like, focus on your job, which makes so much sense, but we're all fans, right? And then, you got the best seat in the house. You're watching, this sport, you're holding a video camera, like you're courtside or you're in the locker room, whatever it is, like you're getting access to these athletes, and you can't help but be a fan, right? You can't help but feel bad if they get injured, or get completely elated when there's a sick dunk or someone makes it, like a three, like it's you're in an arena where everyone's above you and around you, when you're on that ground level, and you can't help but get tingles and feel like this is special every day you go to work. And then you mentioned playoffs, right? And it's even more. It's
It's never felt like a day of work. So
well, and I think, like, obviously there's a lot of focus on the documentary side, but even the video that you text me, you're like, hey, I need this golf, this is the idea, grab one of your buddies, and then we're doing a scheduled release video. I mean, that's, you know, that takes you out of your day-to-day, you know, documentary filmmaking, kind of like what, you know, the community stuff is. So it's always changing. It's always different, right?
Right.
And that's like a little, you know, what was it, like a 30-second, 1 minute video?
Yeah.
Like, but you've met there's 30 people in that like little clip. I think my clip was like 5 seconds,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
But there's so many awesome
Yeah.
clips in that of community and people, and, you know,
Yeah.
we all recognize, oh yeah, it's that person, I know that person.
Yeah.
You know, and they're, some of them are fans, some of them are in the organization, some of them are people in the community. Like it's really cool to build that.
Yeah, and there's just a variety of content that we're creating these days, and you know, we're getting more and more into podcasts, you know, and then we're getting, you know, we have a series called The Path that we're doing, and that's kind of more like a SE featured 5-minute shorts. So I love the variety, and I love, you know, just it's not the same thing every day, and so I think that's why I've loved the job so much, and you know. You know, we're evolving with the times and social media, and you know, many years ago you never shot stuff vertical, and now we're learning we gotta shoot everything in vertical because people want reels on Instagram. So
yeah, everyone's watching it on their phone for the most part. Right? So during this whole process, during this whole kind of last 8 years, you've kind of fallen in love with endurance sports and triathlons and
weird.
Why? Like, you know, like, it's great in Oklahoma because most things are flat, but then it's also 110 degrees and it's 30-mile-an-hour winds. And so, who first introduced you to like the triathlon space?
Yeah, so it was kind of a unfortunate series of events that kind of threw me into triathlons. I was always a big rugby player. I played rugby in college, and I played rugby here. And had a couple bad knee injuries and had a couple meniscus surgeries on my right knee. But it got bad to the point where I had something called bow knee, where your knee starts to kind of bow inwards and you put a lot of pressure onto the outside of your meniscus. Only way to really fix that is they go in there and they cut a piece of your femur and they straighten out your knee and put a couple plates and screws in. Not a big deal, right?
Not a big deal at all. Yeah.
One of the most painful things I had to wake up to when I came out of anesthesia. You know, lost a lot of flexion in my knee, had to do 2 follow-up manipulation surgeries where they basically put you out and they snap your knee back. Because it's not pleasant. But your scar tissue basically allows you to have your scar tissue loosen up to gain more flexion, because my goal was I want to get back on a bike. I just want to bike, and I know probably gonna have to hang up the rugby cleats at some point. But, you know, going through PT, you know, I was talking to my doctor and I was like, what can I do now? Like, I know I can't be, you know, skiing down mountains or playing soccer anymore, or playing rugby. And he was like, well, biking is probably good. Swimming is probably good. And you could run as long as you're not cutting, you know. Yeah. And I'm just like driving home one day and I'm like, bike, run, swim, bike, run, swim, bike, run, swim. Oh, wait, that makes a triathlon. So after like a year and a half of intense PT, because I lost so much power in my leg, it was a painful recovery process, because your next step from there is a knee replacement. You know, I decided, you know, just sign up for a little triathlon, a little sprint. A sprint is very easy. It's like 500-yard swim, and then you bike like 12 miles, and then you run a 5K. Okay. And so the triathlon world here is very well organized, and they have a sprint down here at Riversport in 2023. Yeah, 2023, I did my first triathlon. That was god awful. The swim was okay, but you know, I biked an average of like 14 miles per hour, and like my average on my miles was like probably 10 minutes. Yeah. And I got beat up and I hated it, but it was like a good hate where I was like, I want to get better at this, because I was so upset at myself. And to kind of put things into perspective, most people who do triathlons average, you know, miles per hour around like, you know, your 16 to kind of 20 range.
On the bike.
Yeah. You know, so, you know, I started training more. I was like, you know, I want to get better at this, you know, and I started kind of falling in love with the sport. But it's a hard sport because it's just you. you're biking by yourself, you're running by yourself, you're swimming by yourself when you're training all the time. And, being a team athlete my whole life in soccer and rugby, I fed off of my teammates and the camaraderie. And so, it was very hard to kind of get good at the sport because it was a big learning curve on the right gear you need and the right bikes, like the right running shoes and the analytics on it all. But, I stuck to it, and then I started doing some duathlons here in Oklahoma City. It's, run, bike, run. Okay. And so, I think it was about spring of 2024. I was like, look, I'm starting to get the hang of this thing. I'm going to sign up for an Ironman. So Ironman Waco, I signed up for it and got part of a really intense training program, which was training about 15, 16 hours a week, 7 days a week. And through the process, I did a couple Olympic triathlons. Those distances are a little bit different there. You swim about 1,500 yards, which is about swim a mile, and then you bike 25 miles and then run a 10K. So these were all kind of triathlons that were kind of getting me ready for like the big dance.
What's your total time for those Olympic ones?
The Olympics ones are about 3 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I assume because you grew up in California surfing, your swimming's pretty good.
Yeah.
Because that's swimming. Most people's most people can run and bike. It's the swimming that, like me, I've done a few kind of ultra marathons and I had a bike for a while, but I haven't done any racing on it. The swim is what worries me. Yeah. Like it makes me nervous. Yeah. But my friends who've done triathlons have said, you make up so much time on the run, and you can make up so much time on the run and the bike. Don't worry about the swim too much. Just get through it. Swim is just the warm up to the real race. Yeah. That's what they always say. Yeah. So that's kind of how I got into triathlons. And, it's just been a journey through injury, and it's been a fun process and a big learning curve. And I'm like, my first year doing it, people have Garmin's on. What's a Garmin? Right, a $20,000 bike. Yeah, exactly. But it's been a fun journey, and I fell in love with it. And signing up for another Ironman here in a couple months. But yeah. So you had 3 surgeries? I've had a total of 7. Okay, so for people listening, you have zero excuse right now. Michael's had 7 surgeries and he's done an Ironman. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, so take me to race day then. Take me to Waco. How was that experience leading up to it? Obviously you've been pretty athletic till this point anyway, which clearly helps. But you're fighting back from surgery. You've been doing PT. And what, like less than a couple of years later, you're like, I've just done an Ironman. So tell me about Waco, race prep, during the race. Let's dive into it. Yeah, so race prep, you really get into high intensity training about 3 months before the race. So my schedule was, on Mondays, I'd swim 1.5 miles. Tuesdays and Thursdays would be the same. You would swim and swim and run. And so you get 3 in of each discipline per week. And then Wednesdays were a big bike. So you're talking about 40 miles ish. And then Friday. This is before you go to work. Yeah. And then Saturdays, Fridays would be the same thing. So you would be like another big run and swim. And then Saturday would be a brick day. So I would basically bike about 50 miles and then run about 5 or 6. And you have to get the brick workouts in, because that's basically what a brick workout is you come straight off of one discipline into like the next. And if you don't train that way, you're going to come off your bike and you're going to run and you're going to fall straight on your face and you get wobbly jelly legs. And then, so I kind of followed that program for about 3 months, but then 2 weeks prior to the race, you have to taper properly. And so you're starting to kind of like the first week of that last 2 weeks, you're dropping everything by 25%, drop everything by 50%. And then a couple of days leading up to it, you still want to keep your legs active. So even like the day before of the race, I still ran about, 2 miles just to keep things moving. But
they always have the races on a Sunday. So you drive into Waco on a Friday, and then Saturday you go in and get your packet pickup. You drop your bike off. You're seeing all these super athletic people, and you're like, "What am I doing here?" But yeah, and so you kind of get your bike checked in. You have to leave everything there, and then you come back like the next morning at 5 a.m. and you set up like your transition area. So transition area is where you come in and you change out of your swim gear and put on your bike stuff on. You bike back in, you put your run stuff on. So you kind of set it up strategically, so you kind of know what you need to put on first and take off first. But the bummer about Waco was, it was wetsuit optional, and the way the wetsuits work is wetsuits add a lot of buoyancy to your swim, and it makes the swim 10 times easier. And it being wetsuit optional, you can wear a wetsuit, but then you're put towards the back of the pack. And the way that the Ironmans basically works is you basically have people with signs up that say, hey, you are going to average this amount of time for your swim. So you're going to be in like the 38 to 40 minute time frame. But if you wear a wetsuit, then you get put towards the back. And it was kind of like a big decision for me because I'm a good swimmer, a pretty good swimmer, but I really wanted to do well. So I was like, hey, I know if I have a wetsuit on, I might be in like the 30-minute range versus like the 40-minute range. But at the same time, if you start in the very back of the pack, then you're also going to be getting onto your bike a lot later. And Waco that day decided to be 90 degrees. So
was it in September, right? Early September?
October 6th.
I was like, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
You think in October it ain't going to be, no, it's 90. Okay, lovely.
So you kind of line up, and I decided to go without a wetsuit. I just like, let's just ride this one out, Mike. And you swim 1.22 miles in the river. And they said the current was going with us, but it definitely was not. And so I averaged like a decent time on the swim. It was I think like 42 minutes or so.
Okay.
But doing an Ironman is a different beast because you do an Olympic triathlon. You're talking about maybe 200 athletes, 300 athletes, but in Ironman, I think there was about 3,000 there. Oh
my gosh.
They let all the pros go out first, and you're jumping in and you're swimming this river, and people are kicking you in the face. Yeah. You're swimming straight into like the sun that's rising,
and it's
so
down
you're blinded. Just down.
Oh, just down.
Yeah,
okay.
down in the Bravos River.
Yeah.
So.
Because there are some that go out and around, right? Like some of the sea ones, you kind of have a point, you've got to go swim around.
Right. Yeah. And so you're swimming the Bravos River, and you're getting kicked, and you're looking up, and you're trying to spot to see where you're going. The sun's shining in your eyes, and so your goggles are fogging up. But had a decent time, and then I got on the bike and was cruising on the bike, and I kind of wanted to stay at like the 18 mile per hour range. I feel like on the bike, a 3-hour bike ride's a pretty good time. If you're below 3 hours, you've done your work and your training.
And that's 100 miles?
It's 56 miles.
56 miles.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So to finish, about the 3-hour range, you're talking about 18 miles per hour ish.
So you did the 70.3?
70.3. Okay. Yeah. And so get on the bike, and 3 miles in, I get a flat tire, and it's just like a straight nut kick. It tears you down because you're just like, man, I've trained this whole time, and here I'm getting a flat tire at 3 miles in. So you carry a little kid with you, and you change your tire, and but the Waco roads weren't that great, and there was lots of flats on this race. But it heated up fast, and so by the time I came into my run, it was about 92, 93 degrees. And because I had the flat tire, I tried to make up time on my bike, so I tried to go a little faster. So by the time I got to my run, I was gassed out, and I started off at like a 9-minute mile, and then it was like 9:15, 9:30. Then made its way up to like a 12-minute mile.
Because it's a half marathon after that.
Yes, half marathon. Yeah. And you run down the Bravos. You go around Baylor University, and so I was just happy I finished. I was excited, thrilled, relieved, range of emotions, but then I was just like, when's my next one?
Like, I need more because of that flat, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and then, you know, when you grow up playing sports, you're competitive, you know, and you've had a taste of it. You're like, I can do better now, right? Like, you're going to chase that, you know, always, regardless. You've had 7 surgeries. Like, you know, there's going to be a time where you can't do triathlons anymore, and you're probably just going to go swim, or you're going to go bike. Like, we're always going to be competing. That's just the nature that competitive people have. How was your back up a little bit? How was your kind of like prep around Oklahoma City to kind of get up early, right? Because we've got great bike trails here, which is, you know, a lot of people who aren't in the bike world or run world don't realize how good our bike trails are. So you got to see a lot of the city and the community around, you know, from your bike, which is kind of really fortunate to do. So how was kind of that riding around the countryside as well?
Oh, it's cool. It's cool. I mean, Oklahoma City River has some great trails. Going up to Overholser. You know, I've gone up in Edmond down like Pops, and then just going straight east and seeing the awesome countrysides. You know, biking around, you know, Thunderbird and those areas, but it gives me an opportunity to kind of explore a little bit more, and also know like what streets not to go down. I've been chased by German Shepherds. I've completely ate off of a bike because of kamikaze squirrels, and you know, I've seen it all. I've been hit by a car before. Where
was that?
Overholser.
Oh my gosh.
But it's cool. I mean, just being able to kind of see a little bit more Oklahoma City that you don't really see by car,
Did you have like a one thing to focus on during the race? I mean, because when you run endurance or you bike endurance, you speak to yourself a lot, right? You're like that self kind of motivation is you're the only person out there in your own head. Like, just put one foot in front of the other. But was there anything that you were really focusing on for that one race?
You know, just lots of David Goggins quotes in my ear. Really, just staying hard. You know.
Taking souls?
A lot, taking souls. Right. A lot of profanity I can't say on this podcast, but and that's the toughest thing is, you know, you train all the time with music in your ears. You know, I swim with music in my ears. I bike 3-4 hours with music, and then just going just by yourself in your thoughts, you know, and just seeing the sweat drip down and just being absolutely exhausted. But you know, a lot of the thing that you do focus on is your nutrition during the race, because that is what makes or breaks a lot of the athletes during an Ironman is your nutrition. You're supposed to have 60 to 90 carbs, you know, per hour. So it's, you know, you're carrying gels with you to make sure you, every 15 minutes, I gotta make sure I take my gel, you know, and constantly monitoring your heart rate. Now it's something also I learned a lot about Ironmans and triathlons is what is like your zone heart rates, you know. So you take 220 and subtract your age, and then so I'm 35, so 185 is like my max heart rate. And then from there you kind of calculate what's like my zone 2. Your zone 2 is about 150 to 160. And so you kind of want to stay in a zone 2 for the whole time of the race. So I'm constantly, you know, biking and looking at my watch, making sure I'm at that, you know, 150 range. Because if you start going above like 160, that's when you kind of know you'll gas out at some point. So, but yeah, lots of Goggins in the head.
It's a dark place. I've been there. And most people who have done any marathon or half marathon, you get to that spot and you're just like, I don't think I can put one foot in the other, right? Or just, you know, just stay up on a bike. But if it was publicized, the conversations we had with ourselves, there'd be a lot of people think a lot worse of us, right? Because the dark places you go to in the endurance space is fun. So you've already signed up for the next one? Where is it?
Galveston, Texas. So April 6th, I'll be there. And so we'll see how I do. The goal is to go under 6 hours. So I did 7 at Waco. So we'll see how this pans out. But
when do you? I mean, obviously you're training still, but when do you kind of really lock in to start training?
I'll probably about 3 months out.
Okay.
Yeah. So like right now I'm training, but I'm not like doing the 3-hour bike rides. I'm
Get the holidays out the way. Just maintaining the base at the moment.
Exactly.
What's kind of? Do you have a local coach here, a local community, and kind of people that help you with not only the workouts but the nutrition side too?
Yeah. No local coach, but the community here in the triathlon world is great. I mean, it's a great group of people who put on a lot of the events, and are open to a lot of like the new people that come in. So me being just new to this sport, I had lots of questions, and so there's a lot of people in the community that have been at a lot of these Ironmans, who have won Ironmans, who I've just absolutely picked their brains and just try to figure out like what was your recipe for success. I think a lot of the top tier athletes, though, that do these things do come from a little bit of a biking background or a running background or a swimming background. So someone like me who hasn't really had that much of experience, is still a learning process. Yeah.
Sick though. You got the bug now, right?
Yeah, I got the bug.
Like you good.
I got the bug.
So the one in April is a 70.3 as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so eventually you're going to jump to a full, and then.
We'll see. I mean, it makes sense for that to be like the next step up, right? Yeah.
Because didn't they had one in Tulsa, right, a few years ago?
They had one in Tulsa a few years ago, and I don't know why Ironman they decided to nix that one. There's the Texas one. There's one in Des Moines, I consider the ones that are a little bit more drivable.
Right. It's crazy. Well, I love it though. I think I've had friends that have told me like, "Come on, you can do it. It's time." Like, I'm not ready to like dedicate, a year of solid training to
you'll
it.
Get the itch. Just try a sprint, and then you'll get the itch.
It's I'm like most people. It's the swim for me. Like I can swim, but I'm not a good swimmer. And so I swim like 50 meters and I'm like gassed. Yeah. Because I don't think people realize how hard it is to like swim competitively or at some form of speed.
Yeah.
Finishing up, let's talk a little bit about some of your, since you're transitioning out of the Thunder, being 8 years, you're going to work for a new company and kind of a more filmmaking, documentary, bigger budget kind of thing, and really going across the world, and some of the stuff the new company has done is super exciting. Tell me about the decision and the new journey and what you're excited for the future of your filmmaking career.
So I think where I see myself is really producing documentaries that really move the needle forward and making a change. And in the documentary world, I think there's a lot of people that do freelance, and they're independent contractors, and I figured that was probably like my next step. And it's very rare that you have production houses that are all in-house. They hire their own cinematographers and editors that are a team that go out and produce these pieces. And so I found a company here in Oklahoma City, Lampstand, who does those things, and extremely talented people there. And so my next journey is with Lampstand, and they tell these meaningful stories, and they do lots of environmental pieces, humanitarian. They're doing a documentary on the fentanyl crisis right now. So I'm really excited about this next journey in my life, and it's a very hard decision to leave the Thunder and step out and do something different, because sports has always been a big part of my life, and I think there always will be a little part of sports, in my realm of talent that I like producing content with, but I'm excited about this opportunity, and Lampstand is doing some great things, so.
It's gonna be awesome. And like I said, you get to travel and do some things, and it's been really, from what I understand, just listening to you talk about it, this is a huge passion of yours, and capturing meaningful content, and not saying that the meaningful content that you capture with the content that you capture with Thunder isn't meaningful. Right. It's just meaningful to a very small group in the grand scheme of things, right? The work that you're going to be doing with Lampstand is kind of worldwide. Right. And so that's really cool to kind of elevate that. And still be involved in Dead Center, still making your FPV stuff, and still kind of do stuff that's keeps you going and that's fun to you, right? So man, excited to see the change there and the growth there. Last question, because I am in the real estate world, and we've started asking real estate related questions to finish up.
Yeah.
Tell me about your dream house. If you were to wave the magic wand right now, what are the non-negotiables that you would have in your dream house?
I'm a big cabin guy.
Okay.
Big cabin guy. So tall ceilings. Yeah. Love an amazing fireplace. Like a nice cozy fireplace. Open layouts. I love the open layouts. But yeah, just give me some tall ceilings and a cabin feel, and I'm a happy guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have your bike set up in the corner and ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Awesome. Well, mate, appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming in. For people listening, where can they find you? Where can they follow you on all your socials and see your work?
Yeah. Follow me on Instagram, Zubach, and then I have a Vimeo page. You just type in Michael Zubach and you'll find me there. And got a couple other pieces in the works on the side, so I'm excited to premiere them here soon. So
awesome. Well, mate, appreciate your time. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Good luck selling the pups that you have right now. If people go and follow Michael on Instagram, you'll see there's some great content of some puppies. If you're in need of a dog, you might end up with one, because the cuteness level is off the charts. But yeah, I'll post Michael's Instagram in the description down below. Go click it right now, follow, and thanks for listening. We'll catch you in the next episode. Cheers.
Thank you.
Hope you guys enjoyed that great episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, huge shout out to our sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, sharing Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. Our other sponsor, the Chickasaw Nation, amazing sponsor. They do amazing things for the state, and they're always sponsoring something in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is brought to you by the Doghouse OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my two pups, and the Doghouse have come in clutch. The team over there are incredible. They've taken care of my two golden doodles, and so it's been an honor to partner with them on the podcast and share the love. And the one thing that I do with the sponsors that I have is stuff that I use and recommend, like the Diffies with my car, Hall of Fame, Chickasaw Nation, huge supporter of Oklahoma, and adding to that is the Doghouse. And so if you're in need of doggy daycare in the day or boarding overnight, they do grooming and other cool things too. But I've had a fantastic experience, and it's an honor and a privilege to share this with you too. So go to thedogHouseOKC.com and follow them on Instagram at thedogHouseOKC, and hopefully our pups will run into each other.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.